down below. There you go. Right, well, hello. Welcome to the first of our Lent series of faith pictures. This is what is called a fresh way to talk about things that matter. And of course, for all of us, we belong to the Christian family, and yet the problem is that very often we're so shy and reticent about talking about our faith. And I think is that I am joined by three people today who don't shut up about their faith most of the time, which is rather good. You'll know they're all familiar faces. So we've got Janet and Judith and Karen, and of course it's the first time we've all been seen publicly together for a little while since Judith's, well, let's say formal retirement. I was going to play the that music that they used to play at the beginning of Auf Wiedersehen, back with the boys again, but I thought, well, no, I'm more back with the girls again here, so it doesn't quite fit. Anyway, welcome to you, and if this is the first time you've taken part in anything like this, don't worry, you're in very good company, because this is going to be something a little bit different to the way in which we may have done Lent things before, not least of all, of course, because in the past we've met in person. We've all crammed ourselves into the small vestry at St Mary's Church, and we've done all kinds of things. We have watched films, we have listened to music, we have eaten and drank. And of course, and there was that very famous time when we were doing the food and drink of the Bible, when I think we got through something about 10 bottles of wine between us. And that's just with the four of us here, never mind everybody else. So it was a very busy time. And but anyway, so we're doing things differently because obviously COVID has meant that we can't meet in person. So we're going to have a half an hour session right now. And then at the end of that, we're going to shut up for 15 minutes and you can go brew up, and then you can come back and then we're going to have a more interactive conversation. And you can actually join with us in this interactive thing, that if you're watching on a device and you have access to Zoom, then we will be able to have you come live and join us. And you're going to need a piece of paper and a pencil to be able to jot down all the numbers. So you might need to go and get that now before we begin. I will be holding up all the details as well, but if you've got a piece of paper and a pencil ready for about half an hour's time, when we let you know about the Zoom codes and stuff, then you'll be in business. Okay, without further ado then, we're going to go on to our first of our sessions. And this is the whole thing about opening the conversation up and how we do that, about how we find some subjects which are much easier to talk about than others. I'm sure that's the case for some of you, that we know that we have things that we feel really good at talking about, and others we think, I'd rather other people didn't know about that, or it's personal. And we're going to watch a recording, first of all, from a man called Andrew Grayston. He's a great Christian communicator, and he is going to tell us about, well, a particular incident that happened to him. And so that's going to be well worth seeing. So we're going to be squaring, indeed, sharing our screens even, which will be fun. And so we'll do that right now as we click on, and we have this first one, which is called Opening the Conversation.
I was on a bus journey, rail station to my home, and sitting behind two ladies, maturer ladies, and listening into their conversation and trying to pretend I wasn't, as you do. And one of them said to the other, oh, it's our grandson's christening on Sunday. And the other one said, oh, yes, I'd forgotten you go to church. Why is it you're a Christian? And the first one said, oh, you can't possibly ask me something like that. You have to ask the vicar. And I was sitting behind them, willing her, go on, say something, anything will do. And eventually she said, I do find the services very peaceful, and I like that. And the other one said, oh, peace, I can tell you all about peace. You should come to my Pilates class. It's the most peaceful point of my entire week. And to my disappointment, the conversation ended with the first one writing the time of the Pilates class in her diary. The other one didn't even get an invitation to the christening. And ever since I heard that, I've been thinking to myself, there must be something we can do to help Christian people when they've got a wide open opportunity to talk about their faith. Not to think, oh, this is an embarrassment, but to think, oh, this is an opportunity.
Okay, well, that's a good starting point, I think, isn't it, for all of us? This whole thing about why some things are easier to talk about than others. So, I don't know, just wondering about the different things that you find easy or difficult to talk about. So, for example, talking about your favorite food or your favorite recipes. I mean, do you find that easy to talk about?
I do.
My colleagues?
I do.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I do.
Yeah,
Yeah, quite easy.
I mean, I'm not a wonderfully good cook, so I don't think it's something I talk about a lot, but yeah, I wouldn't find it particularly difficult to talk about foods I like, because I do like eating.
Yeah, well, join the club. So yeah, that's right. And then of course there's more. What about, say, your politics?
I'm reluctant to talk about my politics. It's something I prefer not to talk about because it is so divisive sometimes. So I'd rather keep an even keel. I'll talk about injustice, and I'll talk about oppression, and I'll talk about people who are going without unnecessarily, but I don't actually name a party.
Well, I think that's one of the easy things, you know. I like to talk about politics, and you know, me and my husband, we check the news first thing every morning, and quite often, you know, we're involved in conversations between ourselves about political parties. And I suppose as a student, I was always very involved. So I think I probably find politics easier to talk about than cooking or food.
Yeah.
I don't talk about politics. I mean, all through my training, we were encouraged not to nail your party to one or the other, not to mention it when you're in ministry. And that doesn't bother me. I know what I agree with and what I don't agree with and what I talk about at home. But it's not something I would particularly want to share with everybody else because of the way I've been trained.
Yeah. I mean, it is a problem, isn't it? Because at the same time, we are just as entitled to express our views as anybody else. But the other side of it is that, yeah, when you have, let's say, a community responsibility, it's there's also that sense of, well, okay, I don't want to be appearing to be so biased about one thing or another in that respect, because it then alienates the possibilities of conversation with people who might hold a different view, because you know that immediately shuts it down.
I think the forum makes a difference too. For example, I wouldn't talk about party politics in the pulpit, but I would talk about party politics in my dining room. So I think you know, the forum determines what you share with others.
Yeah. I mean, in my house, for example, well, you have to use my downstairs lavatory to know which political party I support, because there's a poster sort of stuck on the wall there. But anyway, never mind. That's another tale. Okay, what about talking about, say, about, I know that's very hard because we are all, if you like, in the business of church, one way and another. But talking about the whole thing of faith, how does that work for yourselves? I mean, think back to the times when, say, maybe prior to ordination, and how people may perceive, first of all, what they think that, let's say, churchgoers or Christians are like, you know, and I remember working in secular employment and people having some very strange views about what they thought that Christians were and how they were supposed to behave and the things they believed and that kind of stuff. Do you have any experience of that? I'm sure you do.
I did in my working life. When I say working life, I mean my secular working life. I worked in an office where everyone was well aware I was a Christian, and I felt I was the butt of all jokes. So when I left that office, the next job I took was in a factory. And I promised myself I wouldn't let anyone know I was a Christian. And after about 3 months, one person came up to me and said, "Can I ask your advice? I know you go to church." So I must have been talking about my faith quite naturally in everyday life. And I never felt embarrassed about talking about my faith. And I think we demonstrate more than we talk about it. We demonstrate it through how we deal with people. And so it's never, ever, all the way through my Christian journey, it's never been a problem. People at bus stops have even heard my discussions. So yeah, for me it's easy.
Yeah, and Judy, of course, you worked out in the community rather a lot. So did your faith sort of, let's say, not so much impinge upon that, because in the end that's about values and stuff as well. So I'm sure that it did, but in a kind of an overt sense of, did you ever talk about matters of faith with people that you visited?
I used to run a postnatal group for mums and babies whose babies were up to 1 year old. And they very often talked about baptism, christening, what was the difference, and how they couldn't get their children baptised because they were Roman Catholic, and the man up the road who had Wrightington Parish-Church, the Roman Catholic Church, told them to go away and not come back until they were married, and all that sort of thing. And I found that quite hard not to put my views on things. But I do find generally that people, when I look back now, I can see how my faith has been strengthened over the things I've experienced. But I think until somebody experiences something that makes them think, and I think that's where faith is born in a way, unless you're brought up with it in that environment, I think something has to happen to people, and I'm saying ordinary people in inverted commas, that makes them think, and that starting place, and then the next thing happens 2 days later, 20 years later, and I think that sometimes if you're thinking back, that can relate to that, and that strengthens the faith. I don't think necessarily people think like that. I think if that happens, everybody will say, "Oh, that's my faith," but I think that's how faith evolves a lot of the time. That makes sense.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And it's very hard sometimes to have that connection, isn't there, when you're in, say, the secular world, that connection between what goes on a Sunday, in your Christian life, or on a weekday basis, if you have, say, evening meetings or study groups or whatever, and with what goes on out there in the quote real world. People do find a real kind of disconnect there, and find it difficult sometimes to sort of take what they've experienced in that Christian life and then applying it in an overt way to their secular lives, and so it becomes like, oh yeah, that's my compartmentalized thing, rather than it being seen as something that underpins everything. It can be quite a difficult thing to not just communicate.
I think people, when it all came about that I was being ordained and I was still working in the community, people were absolutely fascinated. Why are you doing this? What's happened to you to make you want to do this? That interest was almost like being nosy, if you know what I mean. They were desperate to find out what was going on in my head. Of course, I didn't know what was going on in my head at the time, but there's that curiosity, I think sometimes when people see somebody with a faith, they've got a curiosity as to why perhaps they don't have a faith. And this is where I think sometimes when something happens to somebody, I mean, a lot of people think, oh, you know, I once said, and one of my parishioners at Prestwich has never let me forget it, I said, when there's absolutely nothing left, when you've done everything you can, all there is left is prayer. You have always got prayer, and there is always somebody listening. And that sometimes puts people in that mindset. And very often people say, oh, you know, God, please do this. And that's the first thing they do. But do they know really what they're doing? Or is, you know, and that fascinates me as well.
And just responding to some of what you just said, Judith, on reflection, some of the best opportunities for conversation about my faith was when I was working in a primary school which where the kids were, I'd say, 96% Muslim, and I worked very closely with a couple of colleagues who were Muslim, and we had a great working relationship. And quite often in our planning meetings in the evening, we'd hit on an issue of faith, and we'd spend an hour discussing it, and we wouldn't get our planning done. We'd simply be talking about questions of faith and the different approaches to, you know, these big life questions. And when I came to the point of going forward for ordination, one of the first people I told that I was going to go for selection for training was my Muslim colleague. And I expected her to be surprised. And she said, oh, I expected that. You've been going this way for a long time. You know, and I was like, oh, I didn't expect that at all. But I think it was the quality. Yeah, the quality of our conversations.
Yeah, yeah.
When people are out there in, if you like, you know, in the streets or places of employment and stuff, you know, sometimes the whole thing of talking about faith can be tough, even within families. There are several reasons, in fact, what I was reading through some of these, in fact, some of the reasons why people find it hard to talk about their faith. The first is blush. In other words, it's too personal or private. The second is hush. You know, I really wouldn't know what to say. The third is rush. You know, I would struggle to find the time to talk about it. The fourth is push. You know, I don't have a right to force my faith on somebody else. The fifth is gush. You know, I wouldn't be able to speak intelligently about my faith. So I've been ordained nearly 28 years. I think that still applies to me anyway sometimes. Sixth is mush, which is my own faith feels confused or unclear. And then there's crush, which is I'm worried or scared about how people might respond if I were to talk about my faith. And so these are all reasons why people don't want to talk about something which actually is so important in their lives. It's not that they're ashamed of it, you know, it's those kind of natural, very human reactions that they have. And of course, I'm concerned about how their expression of the things that are important to them can be received or perceived by others. We're going to see another film now, in fact, which is all about people and their abiding and passionate interests. And it'll be interesting to see just how clearly and with such great clarity they talk about the things that are important to them. And so we're going to try and find that one now. And this is another one from our series. So let's see where we go with that one.
What you're looking at is a model of Matlock Station in Derbyshire in the late 1930s. The line was built by the Midland Railway in the middle of the 19th century, and it's grown up over time. If you go there now, you can still see bits of it. These buildings here are still there, and just behind this one, you can still see that shed, which is now a bus shelter. And the line became so popular that that shed became far too small. In 1874, they had to build that great big one. And for many years, it was a main line in the British railway system. Part of creating a model that works is actually going back to some of the original and understanding how it was made. And one of the things I needed to do on this particular railway is behind me here is a hill, which at the moment is blank, and it doesn't really feel satisfactory. So I went and found what in fact was a barn above the famous Derwent reservoirs. Took some photographs of the barn, from which I then made some scale drawings. And out of the scale drawings, you then start to make a model. And you notice things like it's got enormous stones, roofing members, not tiles. And if you look inside there, you can see the A-frames that support the roof. And things like the windows and the doors have got sills and lintels and bigger stones and smaller stones, and just that attention to detail. You look at it and you think, yeah, that's the real thing. This is an unusual signal box because it's on stilts, but the real challenge I had was inside here. How am I going to make the levers? And suddenly I just had an inspiration. I took an old comb, broke off every other tooth, and then painted the rest of the teeth. And there you have it.
We are having a few connection issues with the videos, unfortunately, but we're going to stick with it because it's very well worth listening to when it comes by. I think you'll all agree, though, that this fella here is so incredibly passionate about his interests and talks about it with such interest and almost kind of, he's very evangelical about it because he doesn't just enjoy it himself, he wants others to enjoy it too. Anyway, seeing as we're having our connection problems, we'll just stop that there for just a moment. So there we go. It's probably just as well we stop at this point because the next person that we would have seen is a person who is very passionate about his snake collection. And I think that might kind of put off one or two people. So,
well, in this tiny
he's off again.
One of the things you really need is height, and trees are actually classic for that. So these are made out of wire, and then you stick this little foliage on it, bend the shape, and so on, and you can have infinite fun doing that. The other thing that's fun about modelling is taking things which are in everyday life and finding another use. So all these are actually kebab sticks. You cut them to length, and you drill very fine holes through them, and feed very fine copper wire, stick a few flowers there. Oh, and by the way, here's a couple here who've had a row and they're out for a walk. New Year's Eve 1999 I started, so it's been going about 15 years, and for many years I thought, oh, I'll never get anywhere near finishing it. It now looks rather worrying that I might finish it, and that of course provokes a crisis. What then do you do?
This is a royal python. They get around 3 to 4. It's a male, so it's small, and the females who can reach more than around 4 to 6. And they're quite a good beginner set because of their calmness, but also the size of them makes them quite adjustable. And then here we have 2 corn snakes, both female, both very good for beginners again. They make a beautiful snake. They come in a variety of different colours and make some real nice pets. And here we have a hognose, who can be not really the best idea for a beginner snake because they can be quite aggressive, but they don't actually bite. It's more of a show. They put on a bit of defence posture. As you can see, he'll start to lift his head up and give a bit of a hiss. You see there, he's giving a little bit of a hiss. This is no corn snake. The name for this one is a Matlock, and it's due to the orange stripes and real nice white body they've got underneath. Once again, very calm, nice little thing. This one's a male. There isn't too much size difference between the males and the females in this species, but they do get a bit more chunkier. This guy's a bit of a wiggler. basically a warm spot. That's what he's doing. I recently got married to my wife Lindsay, just looking at a few of the photos from her wedding. As part of our wedding night, Lindsay sort of attended, my parents sort of planned the whole thing as well as Lindsay and us two together. One thing I forgot to mention to Lindsay though, as I was adamant on planning how the cake would look. So I designed the cake with a bit of my own design really. So the cake featured a couple of spiders on top with bride and groom, and a nice big snake wrapped around the 3 tiers of the cake. Lindsay didn't like the fact that I had a few snakes. She sort of grown to accept it. One thing she didn't like though is the part with having dead rodents in the freezer for feeding. One time she came home and went to get some out for tea from the freezer and found a large number of dead mice in the freezer, which she was quite shocked at. And she wasn't the happiest of people right then at that moment.
Welcome to Hillsborough, the home of Sheffield Wednesday. This is my passion, my hobby. Come to all the home matches. I've got a season ticket here. So it's very much a part of me, a part of my family. I'll tell you a little bit about Sheffield Wednesday. It was founded in 1867, which is a very proud date in any Sheffield Wednesday fan's life. It's one of the oldest football clubs in the whole of England. Sheffield Wednesday is a rather unusual name. The reason it got the name of Sheffield Wednesday, kind of obviously when you're talking about it, but when the club was founded, it was a lot of shop workers who all worked on a Saturday and couldn't play their football on a Saturday, and hence the reason played it on Sheffield on Wednesday night, and became known as Sheffield Wednesday. That was their day off, the half-day closing. So that's where the name comes from. This site, the Hillsborough Ground, came here in 1899, and it was it's in the area of Oleton. Now, you'd think, what's that got to do with anything? But Oleton is actually spelled Owlerton, Owlerton, and hence Sheffield Wednesday's nickname, the Owls. That's where that came from. So I started coming here as a small child. We lived not very far away from here, within walking distance, and my mum used to bring me. It's quite unusual that my mum used to bring me. My dad was actually already in the ground, but in the olden days, at half time, they used to open the gates and let you in for free. And so mum used to walk me down because she was a mad Sheffield Wednesday supporter, but was caught at home looking after the kids. And we used to walk down and come along and go in at half time and watch the second half of the match for free. So yes, kind of unusual that fans, the sort of fans in our family have come down the women's side. Actually, it's me and my daughter who come to the Sheffield Wednesday matches, and that's very much evident. One of my earliest memories is of my mum dancing me around the living room, and then crying hysterically. Couldn't quite understand why, and because it's only in later years I found out that it was when we got the FA Cup final. I won't tell you what year because that's going to tell you my age. And we lost in extra time, so we were winning 2-0 and ended up losing 3-2, and hence the reason the dancing round and the crying. These are the Sheffield Wednesday programmes. I've just brought a few along today. I've got hundreds of the things. Most of them are up in the loft, but we do get them out and reminisce over them. My dad's got a lot, way back to the 1930s, so we do like to get those out and have a reminisce as well. Think about some of the games, the Arsenal games against when they played in the FA Cup final and the League Cup final. Fortunately, we lost them both, so that's a bit of a sore point. A lot of people will remember Paolo Di Canio pushing over the referee. That's always a good fun one that we remember fondly. Not certain the referee does, but there we go. Football's a big part of our family life, and it's been involved in our wedding days. My wedding day, quite a long time ago. Before we knew the fixtures, we picked the date, and it was the Leeds-Sheffield Wednesday match. They were both in the Premiership at the time, so it was a very big fixture. Unfortunately, my church and the wedding venue, Hillsborough, was smack bang in the middle of it, and we lost a lot of our guests in football traffic. My bridesmaids got stuck and were late to the reception. Their car then broke down, and we had to actually start the wedding breakfast without them. They did manage to get there, which is good. And just recently, my daughter got married. She actually married a former Sheffield Wednesday player, so still keeping it in the family. And football made its appearance in the wedding speeches there. We all got to sign a football and pass it round. So yeah, we really have football in our blood. A lot of my friends don't understand it. They don't play football, don't enjoy football. I think they tolerate me talking about it. And sometimes it's not easy to bring up the subject of football because you can see them rolling their eyes, oh, here she goes again. But sometimes you just can't help it.
There we go. So people there talking with great animation about their passions, not necessarily ones that everyone would share, you know. And it's interesting, isn't it, that there are those three different ones. Model railway, very creative. The snake one, well, okay, not everybody's cup of tea, I'll grant you, but the guy was obviously, he really felt very passionate about the creatures, you know, they looked after in a very nurturing sort of way. And then finally the football one, which, well, I mean, as a football fan, yes, you suffer for your passions there. So yeah, there's some links there with Christianity, I think, in some respects. But these are important things to those people, and we've learned something about the three people that we didn't know before. So we're going to do a quick true or false here, okay, for everyone to have a think about. And this is what we're doing, is that to write down 3 short statements about yourself. 2 of them are true and 1 of them is false. You've got to try to think of unusual facts to make it harder for everyone to do. Now, I know that some have already been doing that one. So, well, I'm going to make a start anyway. So here we go. If you listen up, we'll see where we go. The first statement: I was beaten up at a cricket match and was hospitalized. The second: I love spiders and snakes. And the third: I tried ballet when I was 6 years old. So which ones do you reckon are true of those?
I reckon you're the first one, because I know you're a cricket lover.
Oh, I see. Yeah, but beaten up at a cricket match?
Who knows? Passions run high.
And I reckon you did try ballet.
Yes, I do. That's what I think.
So
okay,
that leaves the middle one, I think. The untrue.
The spiders and
the spiders and
okay, I do like spiders and snakes. I've never tried ballet, and I haven't got the knees for it. And and if anybody's thank you. And if anybody's ever seen my knees, then you'll know why. And then thirdly, yeah, I was once beaten up at a cricket match, and I ended up in hospital. Yeah, that was a bit of a trauma, to say the least. Anyway, never mind. Okay, right then. So, Janet, have you done yours?
First
Come on,
statement,
then.
I am a cat. Go on. I am a cat lover. I adore cats.
Yeah.
I don't mind dogs, but I think cats suit my nature. I am painfully shy. And I love to walk and exercise.
Okay. Right. I know you love cats. You keep cats. I think you can be very shy. So yeah, I'm going to say the false one is the walk and exercise one. For no other reason that the other two I think are true.
Yeah.
What does
I
anybody
hate
else think?
walking anywhere. I won't
Oh,
walk.
yeah. Well, I know you've got a cat, Janet. So if you didn't love cats, you wouldn't have a cat. So
Well,
yeah,
he's
I'm gonna,
behaving. It's lucky he's still alive.
I'm
I
gonna
mean,
go
I
for
like
the
cats.
first two.
Yeah. So not walk and exercise. I think it's getting there. Judith, any comment?
Well, no, not really. And she gave the game away, really, didn't she? That she about the walking.
That's right. Yeah.
So,
Okay. Yeah. I love cats, but I
Know
couldn't
me
eat a
so
whole one.
well.
Yeah. Okay. Right, Judith. What are your three statements then?
my three is I have a love of fast cars, and I have actually driven around the course at Oulton Park.
Mhm.
I went to Yorkshire specifically to go in a hot air balloon.
Mhm.
And my third one is I have a sister.
Okay. Right. I didn't know about the
I
cars
think
thing. That's a
you have a brother.
Yeah, I love fast
Jude.
cars. Yeah, great.
Mhm. So Karen, yeah, you just said, yeah, that she just has a brother, yeah. Maybe it's just he has extremely long hair and likes braids and stuff. Who knows? So
So what do you think, Jan?
I know you haven't got a sister. You have a brother. I do know that you are. You enjoy cars as such, shall I say? You love fast cars, and I think you were given a gift of going into a hot air balloon. But that might have been Rachel rather than you. So I'm going to say the last one is the wrong. Is the lie.
okay.
Yeah, I went to Oulton Park with a friend of mine. We had a great time. Sorry, Kevin, do you want to say anything?
No, I was just going to say I have to say I think I agree with the other two. I know you've mentioned a brother before now, so but not a sister. So yeah, I think we got that. And the hot air balloon as well. That's I didn't know about that.
Yeah, I went to York. We had 3 attempts to have it. I wanted to go up in a hot air balloon where I could look round the walls of the city. So my first attempt was in Chester, but we couldn't go because of the weather. And then we went off to York, and then that was cancelled because of the weather. And then the third time we went back to York, and I went up in it. Absolutely fabulous. Oh, wow. People talk about peace. It's the most peaceful place on earth, is up in the air. And no, I don't have a sister. I have a sister-in-law.
All right. Fair enough then. Okay.
That's my
Karen,
brother's
have you
wife.
got 3 statements?
Yeah, I've come up with 3 very quickly now. Number 1 is I absolutely love horse riding, and I'm frequently out on my horse. Number 2 is I have a large collection of photographs of different fungi taken in, places around like Pennington Flash and Borsden Wood. And thirdly is in my 20s, when I was travelling, I was in India and I broke my jaw and finished up in hospital. So
wow.
3 things.
Okay. Right. Any right? Come on. Any responses to that?
Yeah, I don't think Karen has.
Well,
a horse.
I know that Karen has a
horse
love for
type, but not a horse.
Not a horse. Okay.
And I know you travelled because you were in a
I know
kibbutz.
that she does have a lot of photographs of fungi.
Oh, really? That would have been the one I would
yeah,
have thought.
I know you went to India.
Mhm.
So I think that's true, that you broke your jaw. I think that's true.
Yeah.
I personally think the
Wow.
false one is the horse riding.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I do go riding every week, but it's on a bike. It's not a horse, so you're quite right.
Oh, well, thank you. Yeah. Although I say photos of fungi, sort of pictures of loads of old mold. Have you been looking through my collection of sermons? Yeah. Right. Okay.
So
Well,
there's some
we've all,
really beautiful fungi, some amazing fungi.
yeah.
And
Oh,
in
yes.
fact,
Yes. I
you
mean,
know, funny we should be talking about what interests us. I once got involved in a conversation whilst on a train travelling back from Liverpool with another guy who just happened to love fungi. And my husband said to me, I can't believe that we've been on a train journey and you've ended up showing photographs on of fungi on your phone to someone you've just met on the spare of the moment. But I suppose, you know, it's when someone shares the same interest as yourself, then, you know, the conversation just gets going, like the person with the snake and the train. Mm-hmm.
This is
of
true.
course. Yeah. No, that's right. You know, just thinking actually, sort of showing various sort of fungal growths and things. You know, if I take your shoes and socks off and sharing your athlete's foot, you know, with you. Sorry. If you've just eaten while you're watching this, I do apologize. I think what we've done is that we've identified that there are some subjects that can be more difficult to discuss than others. And then that does include faith as well. And we've also found that there are some things that we find it so easy to talk about, you know, like the people who are passionate about model railways or snakes and things. And also, of course, you know, the football fan. And you get two football fans together and they can just talk absolute rubbish for hours about footy. And I speak as a football fan who's very good at doing that anyway. So there we go. So we're going to have to think now. We're going to have a break and then we will then come back together and we're going to be having a conversation together, and we hope you can join us. And so as we asked you to get your pen and paper earlier on so that you could join in the conversation, this is the number that you have to go up for. So it is, and if you're ready for this, it is, right, I'm going to put this up now. I don't know if you can see it. There we go. It's 843 4882 3223. So that's the number, you know, for the meeting. So it's 843 4882 3223. And of course, there's a pass code as well that you have to get in, and that is 025728. That's 025728. There we go. Hope you got that. And we hope then that you can join us. I'm going to be opening that up in just a moment, and then you can then just click on when you're ready. And in a few minutes, when the kettle's boiled and we've come back with our fresh brew, then we'll all have big conversation together and talking about things of faith. So look forward to seeing you then. So Janet, Judith, Karen, thank you so much, and hope you can stay with us for later on. And if you can't quite understand, and but anyway, we're all going to go off now, have a brew up, and we'll catch up later on. So without further ado, ta-ra for now.